Known for its many colorful murals, chic clothing stores, stylish bistros, and late-night bars, Wynwood is one of the city's most prominent districts. While the world's largest open-air museum nears its 100th year, it is time to share its story of humble beginnings, diverse demographics, and modern-day gentrification. The neighborhood's origins date back to 1917 when Miami residents Josiah and Hugh Anderson purchased an agricultural estate that would become known as Wynwood. Its founding fathers were paramount to the logistical cultivation of the region. Josiah, who was a member of the Miami City Council, implemented an urban plan that's still in use throughout the city. Anderson was integral to the development of the waterfront Miami Shores Village as well as the Venetian Islands, an artificial island chain in Biscayne Bay. Working-class families constitute the majority of Wynwood's history. In the 1920s, a nascent Wynwood attracted a population of factory laborers for its proximity to the burgeoning garment district, today known as the Fashion District. In addition to the clothing manufacturers and retailers in the area, Coca-Cola opened a local factory in 1926, and from 1928 onwards, the American Bakeries Company occupied a Wynwood block which they later vacated in 1981. The building would eventually serve as the early epicenter of the Wynwood Art District. Despite the many factory employment opportunities in early Wynwood, the majority of its first-wave residents traded Crown City living for the novelty of suburban life following World War II. During this transition, Wynwood underwent its first major cultural shift. Mid-century Wynwood was characterized by a notable influx of Puerto Rican immigrants, by which it earned the nickname Little San Juan. Puerto Rican restaurants lined the streets, and churches, schools, hospitals, and parks bore the names of Puerto Rican activists, politicians, and intellectuals. Over the next decade, Wynwood would diversify and integrate Dominican, Haitian, Colombian, and Cuban inhabitants. By the late 1970s, the Wynwood neighborhood was considered lower middle class. Unemployment was at 55%, and drug trafficking was rampant. Wynwood was considered a springboard community for new immigrants. Their goal was to improve their economic standing so they could leave the neighborhood as quickly as possible. Wynwood's initial turning point occurred in the mid-80s when some artists from the South Florida Art Center took up the residence in the vacant American Bakeries building. The small coalition built the largest artist space in the state, which is still known as the Bakehouse Art Complex. Today, it comprises some 50 studio spaces for 100 local artists working across various media. The presence of the Bakehouse subsequently attracted a community of artists and gallerists who collaboratively breathed new life into an alien neighborhood weighed down by poverty and crime. But Wynwood doesn't stand alone in its attempt to find its true self. Early Soho was an industrial zone full of cast-iron warehouses and cobblestone streets. Large upscale companies used the warehouses to store their extra merchandise and made use of the ornate window fronts to display some of their finest wares. Shortly after the turn of the 20th century, Soho had suffered a decline and was full of sweatshops, illegally employing minors and immigrants with little pay and bad working conditions. The slum soon earned the nickname Hell's 100 Acres. Labor laws were eventually passed and the illegal sweatshops moved, leaving the area dilapidated and undesirable. In the 1960s, artists began moving into the neighborhood, taking advantage of the large buildings with low rents, perfect for starving artists who needed lots of room to practice their profession. By the 1970s, it was already one of the trendiest neighborhoods in Manhattan. However, it was the arrival of Wynwood's best-known figure, Tony Goldman, that thoroughly transformed the neighborhood into a prospering haven for artists, gallerists, and business owners. Goldman was a real estate developer with a keen eye for revival projects, and in the mid-2000s he purchased 25 Wynwood warehouses for what would become the Wynwood Walls. Goldman was looking for something big to transform the warehouse district of Wynwood. Soon he arrived at a simple idea. He thought Wynwood's large stock of warehouse buildings, all with no windows, would be a giant canvas to bring the community the greatest street art ever seen in one place. Starting with the 25th and 26th Street complex of 6 separate buildings, his goal was to create a center where people could gravitate to and explore. This would develop the area's pedestrian potential. The Wynwood Walls is an internationally urban graffiti museum populated with tens of thousands of feet of colorful murals by some of the world's most legendary street artists, including Pixel Poncho.
Hello everyone, I'm here at Wynwood Walls and I'm with the artist here, Pixel Pancho, and we are conducting an interview. I'm very excited about it. Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so I have the first question. What does art mean to you?
I guess expression, so freedom to expression, so something that give to people like the liberty to tell everything or to explain or bring up issue that can be resolved in the society, so and not only. So I guess this is art for me.
What do you think about emerging neighborhoods such as Wynwood?
The double face is like it's become commercial, so sometimes there is a risk that the art it's becoming too much decorative. But here in Wynwood Wall, they try to keep this the message. Of course, like around is becoming more commercial, but this is the double face of the stuff, of the coin. But I guess it's good. I mean, it's bringing people, it's bringing money, it's cleaning up the neighborhood. So I guess it's positive at the end.
While the art district encompasses almost the entire neighborhood, the fashion district is located in the middle of this enclave. Not everybody is aware of Miami's fashion district, but 20 years ago it already existed almost exactly as it is today in the mind's eye of Korean entrepreneurs. As the district became more popular in the 1980s, many of the manufacturers moved out of Wynwood to make room for more retailers. As the value of commercial square footage went up, the manufacturers felt it was better to move to places like Hialeah. Today, for 5 blocks along Interstate 95 on the western edge of Miami's Wynwood neighborhood, you can buy women's clothing, jewelry, and handbags in practically every store. Over the course of the last 20 years, many of the businesses in Wynwood's fashion district have been purchased by South Koreans. At Miami City Hall, there's an apparent willingness to sustain and grow the fashion district with tax incentives and zoning adjustments. Korean Americans paved the way for today's investors. The neighborhood is rocketing in fame for its role at the center of Miami's gallery scene, and Wynwood's glitzy new face has caused local property values to soar. The latest culinary craze has swept Wynwood, and a wealth of food halls have opened in short order. From Italian to Asian to health foods, these food halls are drawing crowds for their diverse and delicious dishes and buzzy atmosphere. Turn back the clock a decade and there was virtually nowhere to grab a bite. Joey's changed that fact in 2008 when Tony Goldman saw a gourmet future for the neighborhood. Today, Wynwood is the place to go for the city's most creative restaurants. Miami's art district is putting as much emphasis on food and drinks as it does on graffiti. From wine bars to market-style drinking dens to Latin-inspired patios, this art-loving neighborhood is one of Miami's most diverse nightlife spots. Since its birth, Wynwood has always been a work in progress. That's what it was in the 1960s, that's what it was in the early 2000s, and that's what it still is today, and will continue to be in the future. It will always be a place that's reinventing itself. The Wynwood neighborhood is a nice illustration of where we're going as a community and as a market.